when it came to the choice of the committee. The committee structure will be similar to the federal system, making sure that there are various allocated members on the selection committee, still allowing the Premier to make sure that the government of the day has a committee that will allow a selection process that's open and is aware of all the people who will be names brought forward. With those few comments, Mr. Speaker, it's a good moment to say that we will now have, in future years, MB brackets NS behind various people's names in this province as we recognize their accomplishments across this province. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Mr. Speaker, I too rise on third reading to extend our full support for the bill brought forward by the Premier. Certainly anything that we can do as a province. Just this week we had the annual Provincial Volunteer Banquet, which is an important event to mark the efforts of volunteers throughout this province, and certainly rewarding Nova Scotians and recognizing them for acts of bravery is certainly something that we can all be proud of and all support. And I'm sure that Nova Scotians will be surprised when they'll see exactly some of the acts that have been undertaken by Nova Scotians over the years where they've put their lives at risk and done brave acts. I'm sure it's something that we will all be proud of as a province, to recognize the men and women and children who make up this great province of ours. So we're pleased with this going through, and certainly look forward to its proclamation at a very early date following passage here in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Premier will be to close debate on Bill number 138. The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank my honourable colleagues from both parties for their comments and for their support on this bill. And also to acknowledge that the bill is better than when it was introduced by the changes that were made. And I thank the members for doing so and bring this forward. It is very important, I believe, that we recognize the bravery and the sacrifice that people are willing to make here in our province. And that goes from everything from our military just to the average Nova Scotian. And so, Mr. Speaker, it's again, it's my pleasure to move third reading.
The motion is for third reading of Bill number 138, Medal of Bravery Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 138, entitled an act to establish an award to recognize bravery of Nova Scotians.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to call Bill number 141, the Respiratory Therapists Act, and on behalf of the Minister of Health, I would like to move that we have third reading of the bill.
Bill number 141, the Respiratory Therapists Act. We're going to need some ourselves. The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to stand for a moment just to put on the record a few comments on this bill. I hope that all members recognize the importance for this piece of legislation, not only to recognize the profession of a respiratory technologist in this province, but to ensure that the continuity of care is continued here in our province, Mr. Speaker. I want to make sure that the government knows the importance of this piece of legislation and ensuring that it proceeds through the process in a timely manner, Mr. Speaker, because far too often pieces of legislation come through this process, go through this House, but end up on the shelf, Mr. Speaker. With this piece of legislation, it's so important because of the timeline, Mr. Speaker, and that is that, you know, the respiratory technologists of this province have been asking government to bring forward this legislation for years now, and we only have to the end of December of this year to ensure that this legislation goes through and that the needed regulations are created and in place by December 31st of this year, Mr. Speaker. And I want to make sure that the government recognizes that this needs to happen and that they're done quickly but efficiently, and ensure that the respiratory technologists in this province maintain their level of registration and the protection to the residents of this province who are served by the respiratory technologists, Mr. Speaker. So I'm glad to see this finally coming through the process for third reading, but I do warn government that they need to make sure that regulations are in place by the end of this year. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity.
The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Speaker, on behalf of our health critic, the member from Glace Bay, we too are certainly supportive of Bill number 141, the Respiratory Therapists Act. Speaker, in the last number of years, we've brought forward and passed a number of pieces of legislation dealing with different professions here in this province who have been wanting to update their legislation. Many of them have their own standalone legislation, and we're certainly pleased to see that this has been achieved with the Respiratory Therapists Act. But, Mr. Speaker, I would remind the government as well that there are still a number of other professions which have been for some time lobbying government for legislation for self-governance here in this province, and I think of the dental hygienists as one right off the bat that unfortunately still hasn't been brought before this House yet, and it's something that I do hope that the government is continuing to pursue in order to allow that profession to have their own self-governing legislation as well. So with that, Mr. Speaker, we're pleased to see that this bill is moving forward, but clearly there is some other legislation that the government still has that is not brought forward, and we hope to see that possibly during the fall sitting of the House so that those professions can have their profession legislated here in the House as well. So with that, Mr. Speaker, we certainly will be supporting third reading of Bill number 141.
I recognize the Government House Leader to be closed debate on Bill number 141. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the honourable members for their interventions with respect to the bill, and on behalf of the Minister of Health, I would like to move third reading of the bill.
Motion is for third reading of Bill number 141, the Respiratory Therapists Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 141, entitled An Act Respecting the Practice of Respiratory Therapists.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to call Bill number 144, the Municipal Grants Act.
Bill number 144, the Municipal Grants Act. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise and to move third reading of this bill.
The Honourable Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too will be brief, and again, since I've already spoken on this bill previously, I just want to reiterate how pleased we are to see this bill move forward, and thank the government for the consultation process it followed with the Nova Scotia Union of Municipalities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I recognize the Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations, will be a closed debate on Bill number 144. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, to close debate on Bill 144 and call for the vote.
Motion is for third reading of Bill number 144, the Municipal Grants Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 144, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 302 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Municipal Grants Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to call the order of business private and local bills for third reading.
Private and local bills for third reading. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Honourable Member for Cumberland North, I would like to move third reading of Bill number 102, the Pugwash Village Grants Act.
Motion is for third reading of Bill number 102, the Pugwash Village Grants Act. House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 102, entitled An Act to Authorize the Village of Pugwash to make certain grants or contributions to certain organizations.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to call, under the same order of business, Bill number 105, the Pugwash Village Capital Grant Act, and it would move third reading on behalf of the member for Cumberland North.
Motion is for third reading of Bill number 105, the Pugwash Village Capital Grant Act. House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 105, entitled An Act to Authorize the Village of Pugwash to make a capital grant to the Pugwash District Volunteer Fire Department.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would now move that you do leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole House on Bills.
The House shall resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. Order, please. The Committee on the Whole House on Bills is now called to order. The Chair will now recognize the Honourable the Premier on an introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in the East Gallery, we have a visitor with us today from Richmond County, Councillor Richie Cotton, who has joined us here for the proceedings today, and I'd like to ask him to stand and receive the warm welcome of the members of the House.
The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to call a private member's public bill, number 106, the Fairness and Fees Act.
This bill has been printed with changes as recommended to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills by the Law Amendments Committee. The question has been called. Shall the clause carry? Shall the clause as amended carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? With Bill 1. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to call Bill number 145, the Education Act.
Bill number 145. Shall the clause carry? Pardon me?
This was amended in law amendments.
The bill was amended in law amendments. Shall the clause as amended carry? Carry. Shall the title carry? Carry. Shall the bill carry? Carry. There you go. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call Bill number 146, the Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act.
Bill number 146 has been called. Okay. Thank you. Shall the clause as amended carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. Okay, we've done 106. We've done 146. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes. I'd like to call Bill number 158, the Financial Measures 2007 Act.
Bill number 158 has been called.
The bill has been amended.
Thank you. The question has been called. Shall the clause as amended carry? Carry. Shall the title carry? Carry. Shall the bill carry? Thank you. Okay, those are done. There you go. Thank you kindly. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call Bill number 163, the Human Rights Act.
Bill number 163. The Bill number 1. This bill has been reprinted with changes as recommended to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills by the Law Amendments Committee. Shall the clause as amended carry? Carry. Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Thank you. There you go, sir. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd call Bill number 166, the Undersea Coal Mines Regulation Act.
Bill number 166 has been called. Again, this bill has been reprinted with changes. Shall the clause as amended carry? Carry. Shall the title carry? Carry. Shall the bill carry? Carry. Thank you. Bill 166. We're going too fast here. Thank you. You want to stem the bill, please? Thank you. Thank you. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to call now Bill 168, the Motor Vehicle Act.
Bill number 168. The Honourable, the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Speaker, just more on a point of order than on this actual bill. If I can just make a recommendation, I note that how Committee of the Whole has been proceeding the last few days is such that I don't see the necessity for us to be having copies made of these reprinted bills for all members of the House. May I make a suggestion that in the future that a copy of the reprinted bill be given to the House Leader of each caucus? Therefore, if there are issues that are going to be raised at Committee of the Whole by that particular caucus, they could make copies for their particular members, or if there is issues in the future on a bill, that at that point we would recess to have copies made for the members as we go through the process. But I have to say it is a complete waste of paper to reprint these bills when there's no issues to be raised, being that most of them have been dealt with at law amendments and there's been consensus leaving law amendment stage. So just a recommendation to the committee and to the Speaker to look into for the future that there has to be a better way for us to do this than to be making all of these unnecessary copies of bills.
Thank you for the members' comments. Those comments will be brought to the attention of the Speaker. The bill number 168 with no amendments has been called. Question has been called. Shall the clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carry. Thank you. The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move that the committee do now rise and report very considerable progress.
Thank you. Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on Bills, reports.
Reports that the committee has met and considered the following bills: 106, 145, 146, 158, 163, 166, and 168. The chairman has been instructed to recommend them for favorable consideration of the House, each without amendment.
Order that these bills be read for a third time on a future day. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move that the bills that have just been reported back from committee be deemed to be on the order paper for third reading, and so they can be considered by the House today.
Is it agreed? The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you very much. I would call the order of business, private members' public bills for third reading.
Private member public bills for third reading.
And,
the Honourable Government House Leader.
yes, bill number 106, the Fairness and Fees Act.
Bill number 106, the Fairness and Fees Act. The Honourable Liberal Leader.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of my colleague, the Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park, it's a pleasure to move third reading on Bill 106. Speaker, as I mentioned before, this bill is meant to protect the parliamentary integrity of the House of Assembly in that any increases that government proposes for existing fees during the fiscal year, actually now those increases would have to come before the House of Assembly in order to be debated by members of the House prior to being implemented. Speaker, I believe this is something that strengthens our democratic process here in our province, and something that I'm sure government will be more cognizant of in the future for any of those proposed increases. Speaker, Nova Scotians do not mind paying a fee for services that they receive from the government, but as part of our legislative process, it's important that any of those increases be debated by the elected members of the House before being implemented, not simply by order of regulation made through the cabinet process. So I do want to thank the Government House Leader and the Premier for having called this bill, and the changes that have been made to it, I believe, strengthen the bill, and this is something that I believe will strengthen the legislative process here in our province. And Speaker, just in closing, I know you heard the remarks that I did make in committee of the whole. I'm just curious if we could get an indication from the Speaker as to whether you would be able to review the matter that was raised during the committee of the whole process. And with that, I would move third reading of Bill number 106.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very briefly on third reading, there is something that I wanted to comment about on this bill, and it wasn't the fact that it's a good bill, because of course it is, and something we fully support. This government, in particular, has made a practice of claiming to be keeping taxes down while raising every fee available to them. Over the 7 years plus this government has been in place, they've done it two across-the-board increases and a number of ad hoc increases. And so it's a very good thing that this House will at least get some notice of these user fee increases, even if, by their nature, they're not the sort of thing the House can generally change or defeat, because most of them are done by regulation or by executive order. The matter on which I wanted to comment was this issue of the proclamation date. Now, at the beginning of the sitting, the Liberal Party raised, through their House Leader, the member for Cape Breton South, the very serious issue of the number of bills that pass through this House that never get proclaimed. A majority of the members of this House say they want something to become law, but the government on its own decides that it will not become law. We have a serious problem in this province, Mr. Speaker, and when I first became aware of this issue nearly 20 years ago, I was told by somebody who actually studied the matter that Nova Scotia had more unproclaimed laws on the books than any other province in Canada. And that has continued since that time, and this government continues the Nova Scotia tradition of passing laws through the House and not proclaiming them. And what it shows, Mr. Speaker, is one of two things. Either the government hasn't thought through its legislation and discovered once the bills are passed that they're not workable for some reason, which shows that what the government needs to do is do more work before these bills are introduced to the House or passed to the House to make sure that when they are passed that they are ready to be put into law. Or the other possibility, Mr. Speaker, is that the government introduces bills in order to get no, I shouldn't put it that way. That would be imputing motive. But it has the effect of garnering positive publicity for the government, but they don't actually then implement the bills on which they've garnered the positive publicity. We have wanted to support the Liberal Party on this. The point made by the Liberal House Leader is a good idea. But the cure for it is for this House to say to the government, we are no longer going to give you the discretion to decide whether or not this law comes into force. And on this bill, which is a Liberal bill, we gave the Liberal Party the opportunity to write in a specific effective date to take out of the government's hands, the decision about whether this law should come into force or not. And the Liberal Party turned down that opportunity. And it's hard to understand sometimes, Mr. Speaker, where the Liberal Party is coming from, because they raised an issue at the beginning of the House. They know what it's going to take to solve the problem, and then we give them on a silver platter the opportunity to deal with the problem, and they decline it. So this is a good bill. It's a good initiative. It's a positive step forward, but we don't know whether it will ever come into force, Mr. Speaker, and if it never does, then the sponsors of the bill have nobody to blame but themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Liberal Leader to close debate on Bill number 106. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me respond to the comments member from Halifax Fairview in saying this. After the last election, our caucus certainly realized that Nova Scotians had sent us a strong message and that we had a great deal of work to do in making minority government work and being an effective opposition. We believe that we have been critical where we had to be critical, but we've offered solutions as well during that period of time. And Mr. Speaker, the member is correct. The House Leader of the Liberal Party did raise the issue of bills that had been passed by the House which had not yet been proclaimed by the government, which is a cause of concern for us in the past and which remained a cause of concern for us at the start of this session. Mr. Speaker, I believe if one looks at the budget brought forward by the government and a number of the initiatives that it adopted, it makes clear that our caucus has been very effective in being able to move forward some of the priorities that we've raised on behalf of Nova Scotians. And I'm pleased as well, Mr. Speaker, to report that the Liberal pieces of legislation which had been passed by this House and were awaiting proclamation have now been dealt with. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I believe that that is, again, an example of how one can be effective in this House, and therefore I think it important that the member for Halifax Fairview realize that we raised the issue not just to raise it, we raised it to get solutions, and in this case we did get solutions, and we will continue to do so not only on this issue but on many other issues, Mr. Speaker. So with that, I am pleased to close debate and move third reading on Bill 106, the Fairness and Fees Act.
The motion is for third reading of Bill number 106, Fairness and Fees Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 106, entitled An Act to Ensure Fairness and Fees Collected by the Government of Nova Scotia.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, I'd like to call for third reading Bill number 145, the Education Act.
Bill number 145.
Order of business, public bills for third reading, and under that order of business, I'd like to call Bill number 145, the Education Act.
Before the Government House Leader moves on that, there was a request made in the Committee of the Whole House with regard to documentation by the Leader of the Liberal Party. I would just note that there have been several bills that have had substantive or a good deal of changes made to those. And for practicality purposes, it's when you do not bring those things forward, or if there are changes that a member takes exception, then you're going to deal with the time required to copy those and get them back to the chamber. I would say this, that it is probably most appropriate that if all House leaders agree that the bills are in appropriate form and there's consensus, that that be identified in advance and save that time and disclose that to House staff and to Ledge Council. And that would be an efficiency where bills may have some contentious issues or further debate. I would ask that then they be presented in their fullness with the changes to the clerks as it comes to the Committee of the Whole House. Thank you. Sorry, the Government House Leader.
Thank you again. Bill number under the order of business, public bills for third reading, the Education Act.
Bill number 145, the Education Act. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to move a third reading of Bill 145, the Education Act. This bill speaks to the process for school closure, school review. It is a good bill. It's a result of a lot of public consultation, a report and recommendations supported by all parties, and it does contain an amendment which I believe strengthens it and provides clarification, and I would move a third reading of Bill 145.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and speak briefly on this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, members of this chamber will be aware that our party was the first party to call on the government to impose a moratorium on school closures roughly a year ago. We had serious concerns over the school closing process in the various boards around the province which were looking into this. And we were very pleased when the government, in fact, did follow through on this by announcing first a moratorium and then the new minister appointing a committee to do public consultations around the province. The two individuals who were appointed to do that consultation, I and my colleagues have stated, act with a great deal of professionalism in that process and brought forward a report with some sound recommendations which are incorporated in this bill. We will now have a uniform process for school reviews across the province with some set criteria, uniform criteria, which seem to make more sense than the kinds of arbitrary criteria that were used in the past. And I think the longer consultation process that will be built into a review for school reviews and not school closings is also very useful. Mr. Speaker, I'm particularly pleased to see that a feature of this bill is that the same process to review schools for closure will be used to review schools around consolidation. This is an issue that certainly here in the central region of the province, in the Halifax Central region, has been of great concern. My colleague from Halifax Citadel has had to essentially do a school consultation process of his own in his community because the board had failed to consult with families and communities that would be impacted by decisions that they had arrived at and which in fact had been endorsed by the Department of Education that would have seen schools close in that community. Small schools, but schools of much importance and great educational excellence. And Mr. Speaker, this isn't the approach that we felt was the best for our children and for our communities. So I'm very pleased that the same process for consolidation will be adopted. This will have an impact in the constituency that I represent, Halifax-Needham, where we also had schools that the board were looking at consolidating, and now, thankfully, if they continue to move in this direction, at least the public, the community, the parents, the families will be able to engage in a dialogue with the board around the future of education in the north end of Halifax. And so, Mr. Speaker, we're pleased to see these features of the bill. I'm particularly happy with those features of the bill, and our caucus will be supporting these changes. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Education. Will be to close debate. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to
order,
close.
please. That's the reason for that entry. The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be brief. I just want to echo the comments of my colleague from Halifax Needham and commend the Minister for her careful review of this closure policy, and in particular the two-person committee that established the process and the criteria. I believe that the longer time allowed for review is a big step in the right direction. The broader criteria represents an improvement, and I particularly want to thank the committee for amending the bill for the better by including consolidation in the process as well. In the second reading, I asked the minister for clarification as it applied to the 3 schools in my constituency, and she reassured me at the time that those 3 schools in my constituency would be the process now being outlined would apply to those schools, and they would start at the very beginning. And since then, she has clarified that, and I very much appreciate her confirmation of that decision. So with that, I'd like to say that I'm happy to support this bill, and I thank her for bringing it forward.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Education of the closed debate. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would like to close debate on Bill 145 and move it for third reading.
The motion is for third reading of Bill 145, the Education Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Title and Act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to call Bill 146, Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act.
Bill number 146. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the members for their cooperation with this bill. It took an awful lot of work, an awful lot of cooperation. I think it's an important bill, and I'd like to move third reading.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the opportunity to speak the third reading of this bill, because the introduction and the discussion of it have been a very interesting exercise and I hope constructive. This is a bill that's been the subject of lively discussion from all sides, which I think speaks to the importance of it to all Nova Scotians. I think the one thing, though, to note is that there were many, many comments, almost uniformly the comments that came forward from the members of the public who chose to present at Law Amendments Committee. Almost everybody spoke on the sudden arrival of the bill and the fact that there hadn't been a great deal of previous consultation. And in the ongoing vein of the discussion of democratic process here, I think it is worth noting that although the goals of the bill are laudable, there are many people who would have appreciated the opportunity to consult more widely with it. Having said that, of course, the topic of the environment is one which always invites long, wide-ranging discussion, and we certainly began to see some of that throughout the process of law amendments and beyond. This is a good bill in the sense that it restates and hopefully reinforces a number of existing commitments which the government has made externally and internally, and as such it merits congratulation, and we're all very happy to be seeing this come forward and to see a clear statement that these are goals which will not in fact be defaulted on. As a signal of an intent to move forward on the environmental health of this province and a commitment to the belief that prosperity can in fact be an environmentally sustainable one, all of us universally welcome it, and I think that members of the environmental community, the public, and all parties are glad to see this reiteration of a commitment on the part of this province to ensure that it does maintain not maintain, but work towards a sustainable future. The law amendments process was well attended, and again, I think that's a testament to the value that Nova Scotians place on this unique process in Canada. We had all kinds of presenters. Perhaps we wouldn't have had so many if there had been more extensive consultation, but nevertheless, it does speak to the importance that Nova Scotians place on the environment and the importance that Nova Scotians place on their opportunity to discuss their view of the environment. My only regret, however, would be that throughout all this, the one amendment, there were numerous amendments brought forward, and they have all worked to clarify the statements that are made in the bill. But my only regret is that the amendment we did bring forward was defeated by both of the other parties, the Liberal and Conservative parties, and that was an amendment which would have attached an actual proclamation date to this bill. So as a statement of aims, it's laudable. and we hope that a commitment will follow it in the form of a date on which those aims will in fact be sealed as a part of government policy. So thank you very much.
If I recognize the Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour, it will be to close debate. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's with great pleasure that I close debate on Bill 146.
The motion is for third reading of Bill number 146, the Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 146, entitled An Act Respecting Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Bill number 163, Human Rights Act.
Bill number 163, the Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's with pleasure I rise to move third reading on Bill 163, the Human Rights Act.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, the Minister certainly was much briefer in moving third reading of this particular piece of legislation than the great fanfare he made when he introduced the bill in the press conference he held to herald the choice that this government said they were giving workers in the province of Nova Scotia, and that they were about to embark on the elimination of mandatory retirement. And Mr. Speaker, we now know that that there were some flaws in the government's process, and we don't know for sure, Mr. Speaker, if this law will ever see the light of day. Mr. Speaker, I unfortunately wasn't well enough to be at the Law Amendments Committee, but I understand there were 3 presentations in front of the Law Amendments Committee. One presentation from the Council of Nova Scotia University Presidents and the Canadian Manufacturers Association and the Construction Management Bureau. All of these presenters indicated that they had not been consulted around this piece of legislation, which in some cases, probably most cases, will have a significant impact on these employers and on their ability to conduct business. All of the presenters said, in fact, they were scrambling to even pull together their appearance at the Law Amendments Committee. This bill was occurring so quickly, or being moved forward so quickly, without any public discussion. Now, Mr. Speaker, on an issue as important as mandatory retirement and the elimination of mandatory retirement, I think that's really disappointing, Mr. Speaker. After all, this is a government that has set up a consultation process on whether or not to have a legislated lunch break in the province of Nova Scotia. That's not something that they felt they could do without some consultation with employers. Yet, at the point of a ballpoint pen, they're prepared to eliminate mandatory retirement, no consultation. It's really curious, I would say, what to make of this particular situation. Mr. Speaker, as a result of the presentations at the Law Amendments Committee from these various groups, the Minister of Education certainly understood the importance of consultation. I heard her interviewed after the presentations by the university presidents, and she indicated that, in fact, she thought more consultation. She said more consultation, probably should have said some consultation, would be useful. Mr. Speaker, The bill has been amended from its original form in which it was introduced. The amendment, in fact, is as follows. Subject to subsection 2 of this act comes into force on such day as the governor in council orders and declares by proclamation this act shall not come into force before the 1st of July 2009. This change, Mr. Speaker, essentially says that if we proclaim this bill, if the bill is proclaimed, then it will come into force at some later time, and you don't have to worry. It's not, in any event, it won't be before the 1st of July 2009, 2 years from now. So this will allow for that consultation, I guess, that the Minister of Education feels is necessary. So I would say chalk one up for the Minister of Education and give the Minister of Labour a naught. We will be very much looking for the consultation process, because it's certainly the view of the NDP caucus that important public policy changes that will have such a significant impact on employers around our province, and particularly large employers like universities, like the manufacturing sector, like the construction industry, that if you can't figure out that you have to consult with these groups, then who will you consult with, Mr. Speaker, really? It's really curious that this hadn't occurred. And so we will be looking forward to that. Having said that, the idea of giving employees choice around retirement is something that certainly this caucus is behind. And we will be supporting this bill, but we will be looking for that process of consultation, and we will be back here, I think, having the discussion about not only the consultation process, but also around the implementation of the choice that the government has held out to workers in the province of Nova Scotia.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour. It will be closed debate on bill number 163. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sorry for rushing it. Just want to mention that there will be no further consultation. What has been changed is the date of implementation. There's 2 years for collective agreements. This bill will go forward as is, and want to thank the members for supporting us. Thank you.
The motion is for third reading of Bill number 163, the Human Rights Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 163, entitled An Act Respecting the Elimination of Mandatory Retirement.
Ordered that the bill do pass. Ordered that the title be as read by the clerk. Ordered that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 166, Undersea Coal Mine Regulation Act.
Bill number 166, the Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Again, I want to thank the members opposite for their cooperation on this, and I move third reading of Bill 166, the Undersea Coal Mines Regulation Act.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a few words on this. As I said in second reading, it is a bill that we, in essence, agree with and will be supporting in third reading. But it's another bill, as my colleague from Halifax Needham said, that there was some lack of consultation, because later this month there'll be more consultation after this bill is passed with the stakeholders happening in Glace Bay. So it seems to be kind of backwards here, Mr. Speaker, and while we are in support of the bill, we had wished that the government had did their consultation on the front end instead of the back end. And I realize that this is a bill that would help move stuff forward in the federal house, that we would have clearly have liked to have this consultation done on the front end. But with that said, I'll take my place, Mr. Speaker, and we'll be supporting this bill in third reading.
The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that my colleague from Glace Bay has spoken on this legislation in the past. We're certainly pleased to see that there's legislation that's going to be passed not only in our legislature but also in the Parliament of Canada dealing with this and hopefully reducing some of the red tape involved with this particular project, and so that there's a clear understanding amongst not only the proponents but the employees and the community at large as to what the rules of operation are going to be with this project. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to see that this bill is moving forward, and it certainly will have the support of our caucus. Thank you.
If I recognize the Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour, it will be to close debate. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's with pleasure I rise to close debate on Bill 166.
The motion is for third reading of Bill number 166, the Undersea Coal Mines Regulation Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill 166, entitled An Act to Facilitate the Effective Regulation of Undersea Coal Mines in the Province.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Bill number 168, the Motor Vehicle Act.
Bill number 168, the Motor Vehicle Act. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that this bill be now read for the third time.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to have a couple of minutes here just to speak on Bill 168 and all about the graduated licensing proposals. And basically, we're pleased to see those come forward, and glad that we're making some progress in that area. However, Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed, as is my caucus, that the amendments that were proposed in law amendments did not see the light of day, or did not see the support from either the government party or the third party. And these were common sense pieces of legislation or amendments that MAD Canada have been putting forward, and that's they've done a lot of good work in this country, and they certainly agree that these would be of benefit to Nova Scotians. The first one, of course, was around supervising drivers, that they would have 0% blood alcohol content, and you know, to me it makes sense certainly that somebody that's supervising a new driver should be fully cognizant and aware of what they're doing, and certainly should not be allowed to be under the influence up to 0.05%. So again, I'm disappointed that's not going to be in the legislation at this time. And the second amendment we had was around a 7-day suspension for blood alcohol content of greater than 5%. That to be the 7 days rather than the present 24-hour period. But perhaps in time, in the fullness of time, government will, in their wisdom, add those to the legislation. So disappointed those aren't there, but overall we certainly support the bill, and you know, Mr. Speaker, it's a good bill, really though, that could be better. So with those few remarks, I look forward to other comments.
The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Speaker, just briefly, we're pleased to see that once again Bill 168 is strengthening the graduated licensing system, which was brought in by the previous government in the 1990s, and it was certainly timely to be updating that program to better reflect the goals that it was meant to achieve, and certainly what was being done in other jurisdictions. Mr. Speaker, I would be remiss if I didn't address the comments made by the member from Pictou West. I've mentioned this before, and Mr. Speaker, when it comes to law amendments, oftentimes caucuses that are proposing amendments usually share those amendments with the other caucuses so that there can be some discussion beforehand in order to see if there can be support for those changes. This is not the first time I raised this, and I would once again remind the member from Pictou West and the members of his caucus that if they are going to be proposing amendments, law amendments, without providing them to anyone first, it certainly does not give an opportunity for any discussion or any consultation on those amendments. And once again, that's what was done this time. There was absolutely no notice given to our caucus that they would be proposing this or that they would be seeking our support in doing so. And therefore, I believe that in the future, if they will be seeking those kind of changes, they should certainly be providing better consultation and better notice of those intentions. So with that, Mr. Speaker, we're certainly pleased to support the third reading of Bill number 168.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works. Will be closed debate. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank honourable members for their indication of support for the bill. The government is not prepared to entertain the amendments that were proposed because the bill is in keeping with existing legislation. It is in keeping with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that applies in Canada, and to do otherwise might provoke a challenge under the Charter. The people of the province of Nova Scotia would be left having to pay the legal bills to fight such a fight in the courts, and we don't believe that it's appropriate for the province to have to do that. The legislation is consistent with the laws that are in place across the country, and again, I want to thank members for their support for the legislation.
Motion is for third reading of Bill number 168, the Motor Vehicle Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Motion is carried.
168, entitled an act to amend Chapter 293 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Motor Vehicle Act.
Ordered that the bill do pass. Ordered that the title be as read by the clerk. Ordered that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the Committee of the whole House on Supply.
Motion carried. The House shall resolve itself in the Committee on the whole House of Supply unto Her Majesty. So we started. Order, please. We'll now call the Committee on Supply to order. For the record, we have 2 hours and 28 minutes left over for today for estimates. The Chair will now recognize the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I call for the estimates for Service Nova Scotia, Municipal Relations.
The estimates of the Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations. The Honourable the Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and indeed I'm looking forward to answering some questions on the budget estimates for the Department of Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations.
Resolution what?
Members of my staff, but I do have probably a fairly lengthy description of how our department. You want the resolution first? Mr. Speaker, I introduce Resolution P31 and move the sum not exceeding $121 million. $121,743,000 be granted to the Lieutenant Governor to defray expenses in respect of the Department of Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations pursuant to the estimate in the business plan of the Nova Scotia and also the business plan of the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation be approved.
Resolution E31 has been called. The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Chair. And beginning, and I will be joined in due time by members of my staff, and I will introduce them when they do arrive. But to begin, I'd like to tell the members of the House a little bit about the Department of Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations, as well as a little bit about the Municipal Finance Corporation. But first, I'm going to begin and touch on a few of the budget highlights. Mr. Speaker, when members compare the first line in the estimate book, net program expenses, from last year's estimate to this year's estimate, you are going to see a decrease of $14.5 million. Now, I know that members would say that that is because we have an extremely efficient department. But I do want to also add that the majority of the difference, $14.5 million, is explained by the transfer of the rebate costs for your energy rebate program from my department to the Department of Finance this year. And actually, Mr. Chair, that does account for a reduction of about $28.1 million. Now, that reduction has been offset by a new public transit capital trust program, which is about $8.7 million, and the contract settlement with the union and management employees for about $4.3 million. So, Mr. Chair, in addition, the budget for the provincial capital assistance program has been increased by $500,000 for this year. And this is a program which assists municipalities in water-related projects to achieve compliance with the new drinking water strategy. And this includes studies that determine a municipality's infrastructure needs and estimated costs, which is necessary information to apply for larger capital projects under federal provincial infrastructure programs. And the program also provides financial assistance to solve immediate problems that propose a risk to public safety or the environment. And Mr. Speaker, I want to, or Mr. Chair, I want to tell you and members of the House that is a program that is very much appreciated by the municipalities in this province, and it's one of the very important and really practical and useful programs that government has generated in recent years. And I expect, Mr. Chair, the good residents of your home constituency can tell you about that. Funding for the community transportation program is increased by $120,000. The additional funding will help expand transportation services into rural areas that are currently underserved. The program assists in the purchase of accessible vehicles for qualifying organizations. And it also supports additional research and best practices to promote community transportation options. A few other changes to operational expenses, amortization, and municipal grants make up the rest of the difference in expenses. There are some other significant changes that members may wish to note. Last year's budget estimates for the department included responsibility for financial institutions in the Nova Scotia Insurance Review Board. However, during the year, these two responsibilities were also transferred to the Department of Finance, and that transfer reduced our budget by $736,000. Some other changes this year that reflect changes in fairly major changes in budget lines. This year, we are investing in the Ignition Interlock Initiative, which is an investment of $270,000, and of course, that is in cooperation with our colleagues in the Department of Transportation. Once we are able to effect the payday lenders legislation, there will be $175,000 in the implementation of it. Now, as you say, once we're able to effect it, as members of the House would be aware, that there is federal legislation that must be passed before we can implement the changes that we've made. And the other very positive investment is in BizPal, which is an initiative of the department to make businesses who are doing trying to set up or continue to make their relationships with government and permitting much easier, and that's a $100,000 investment. Now, I'll address the details of those a little bit later. So I want to remind members that even though the estimate is $14.5 million lower than the previous fiscal period, Service Nova Scotia is able to maintain the status quo of the excellent services that it does deliver. We've accomplished being able to maintain the status quo through internal shifts, and we've also included some small additional programs that contribute to the government's priorities. And I'll explain these as I discuss highlights of the budget. The other line that should be explained is the difference between this year's and last year's funded staff, or FTEs. The funded staff has increased by 13.5 FTEs, and that is rounded to 14 in the estimates books. The reason for this follows. During the upcoming fiscal year, Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations will hire 16.5 full-time equivalents to manage your energy rebate program. The staff will be responsible for the issuance and the audit of the rebates paid, and this year, as we initiated the program, we contracted those particular services to an outside agency. The department is also currently developing new computer programs to replace the current systems which can no longer be supported. Now, the new investment in technology will further improve client service and enable more electronic service delivery. And there will be 6 funded staff hired to support these new systems. The cost of the staff and the cost to maintain the new systems is less than the support cost for the systems which they will replace. There are 3 staff being added to administer the Ignition Interlock program. This type of program is already in place in 9 other provinces and territories. However, the Ignition Interlock program is more than a device which is installed in a vehicle. It encompasses training, monitoring, and ongoing education and rehabilitation for participants. This program will provide Nova Scotia with an enhanced countermeasure in the management of impaired drivers. This program provides benefits to the policing community, addiction services, and also people wishing to have their licenses reinstated by offering a safe alternative. The program will be administered by the Registry of Motor Vehicles in cooperation with Addiction Services, Justice and Transportation and Public Works. The tentative start date is November 2007. 2 staff have been added for the administration of the Petroleum Pricing Product Act, and I'll provide more information on gas regulation shortly. These additions, along with 5 staff added through restructuring to meet business needs, have been offset by the transfer of 14 funded staff related to the Financial Institutions in Nova Scotia Insurance Review Board to the Department of Finance. And there are also 5 staff working on capital projects for whom we see funding from outside the department. Overall, revenues have remained relatively equal to last year's estimates. Although revenues have been reduced by $60 million, the most significant change is a reduction in revenue of $59 million caused by the transfer of financial institutions to the Department of Finance. So because we have moved that service, if you take a look at the revenues that we have for the services that we've maintained, we're very close to where we were last year. There are two other types of revenues. Revenues from taxes include gasoline and diesel tax, a levy on the private sales of used vehicles, the tobacco tax, and the corporation capital tax. Revenues from fees received include such items as commercial registration, passenger registration, driver's licenses, and company registrations, just to name a few. In looking through the estimate book, members probably already noticed that we're predicting that the tobacco tax will decrease by $12 million. Although the average retail price of tobacco products is estimated to increase 4.5% in 2007-2008, generating an increase in tobacco revenue of $4.5 million, taxable shipments of tobacco products are forecast to decline $16.5 million. Now, this is due in large part, I think, to the success of the programs designed to encourage people to stop or not to begin smoking. Also rules which restrict where some cases we have not quite succeeded, Mr. Chair. We will continue to work on those individuals. Mr. Speaker, the cessation programs, and also, to be quite frank, the rules which really severely restrict the places where smoking can occur have obviously cut down consumption. And the other thing which we have to recognize is that as the price of tobacco products does go up, there is an increase in smuggling. Now, we know for certain there's been a decline in smoking as a result of our tobacco control strategy. However, the decline in revenues is also the result of increased smuggling. Tobacco smuggling is not just a Nova Scotia issue. It's a national concern with other jurisdictions, in particular Ontario and Quebec, seeing the same trend as Nova Scotia. To combat tobacco smuggling, we're assigning 2 compliance officers to work full-time in partnership with the RCMP on a trial basis. The purpose of this partnership is to provide resources solely dedicated to illegal tobacco matters, to promote the exchange of information, to lend our tobacco expertise to the RCMP, especially as it relates to the Revenue Act, tobacco markings, and prosecutions. In addition, we have visited each RCMP detachment to provide an information package introducing fuel and tobacco compliance, the Fuel and Tobacco Compliance Unit, contact information, as well as an overview of the Common Revenue Act offenses and fines. We have full confidence, Mr. Chair, that our tobacco control strategy will continue to help more Nova Scotians quit the habit. As a result, we expect tobacco revenues to continue declining. On the other hand, revenues from fees have increased by $7.9 million, primarily due to 2 factors: change in volume and the government-wide 6.8% increase in fees for the past 3 years of CPI. More specifically, changes in volumes account for an increase of $1.4 million, and the CPI increases account for $6.5 million, or 5.31% of revenues. The percentage is below 6.8% due to the varied implementation dates of April 1st, May 1st, or June 1st. And of course, the difference in these dates was to allow for reasonable notice of changes. The Department of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations is guided by the interests of consumers, businesses, and municipalities as it supports the government's priorities to create a globally competitive business climate, to seize business economic opportunities, and to build our communities. Virtually every Nova Scotian at some point in their lives has a direct contact with the Department of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations. From the registration of the birth of a child to the registration of the ownership of a car to the application for a birth certificate, all of these major milestones in life involve contact with our staff. As the name describes, Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations is the service delivery arm of the Government of Nova Scotia. The department brings government programs and services to citizens and businesses. Now, the department is fortunate to have an excellent staff. The number of people working for Service Nova Scotia in the 50 locations in the 24 communities around our province numbers approximately 800. And they answer over 13,000 information and service inquiries daily. And they do that through our Access Nova Scotia centres, registry offices, our call centres, and our website. The Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations website receives an average of 4,800 visitors a day. Visitors are spending, on average, 10 minutes to a half hour on our website. And almost 70% are returning visitors to our website. The high number of return customers tells us that we can be quite confident that the information on our website provides a very valuable service to those who use it. I also want to tell the House, Mr. Chairman, that we have done exit surveys at some of the access centres in the province. And the results of the exit surveys at the access centres said that 90% of our customers are very satisfied with the service they received. And I'm very encouraged that Nova Scotians appreciate the efforts of the staff of these centres and how the staff works to serve their interests. Our staff, Mr. Chair, also plays an important role in the development of communities. We foster strong municipalities by providing them with information and advice, and also with financial support. We also provide property assessment data to Nova Scotia's 55 municipalities and to over 500,000 property owners every year. The municipalities use that assessment role for levying property taxes, which of course are the foundations of municipal finances. Through the Registry of Deeds, the department provides a vast array of geographic information and property registration services. Now, Mr. Chair, at this time, I'd like to go over some of the background in Service Nova Scotia and municipal relations in more detail. And I'll just hesitate here for a second while staff does move in, and I will introduce them once they become settled. Mr. Chair, sitting in the chair to my left, and joined by the Deputy Minister of Service Nova Scotia, Municipal Relations, Mr. Greg Keefe, and I'm not mistaken, Mr. Keefe, you may be the longest serving deputy in government by this time, are you, at least in a single department?
Maybe I don't think Peter got me by quite a bit.
No, but he switched departments, hasn't he?
Oh, yes, he did.
Yes, yeah, I think, so he's probably the rank in terms of his seniority in terms of his service in a single department, and with a variety of ministers.
Yes.
Yeah, all very good ones, according to him. And I'm joined on my right by the Director of Finances for the department, and what is your exact title? Director of Finances. That was very good, by Pam Muir. And obviously, you can understand with a name like that how efficient she would be. I don't think we are related. Anyway, as I said, at this time, I'd like to go over some background in Service Nova Scotia municipal relations in more detail. Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations was formed almost 7 years ago to be the lead department for improving access to government information and services for businesses, individuals, and municipalities. At the time of its creation, the department was mandated to become the single window service provider for government services, to provide quality services delivery with convenient access, to reduce the amount of red tape on businesses and individuals by streamlining processes, and to provide municipalities with a single access point to the provincial government. This mandate requires the department to make extensive investment in technology and process re-engineering to ensure that its systems meet or exceed government and client expectations. In many areas, the department has made significant advances in streamlining processes and improving government service. Experience has proven that with careful planning, appropriate development time, and the use of technology, the department can simultaneously achieve more effective and more efficient service delivery. Now, most of the investment to date has been attained by reallocating resources and attaining internal efficiencies. The department is responsible for ensuring results in the following areas. Thank you. Effective and efficient access to government information and services through service channels, in person, by telephone, the internet, and email. And, of course, the other type of mail as well. The provision of streamlined registration, licensing, and permitting processes. Customer and stakeholder satisfaction with Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations services, effective and efficient policy development, enforcement and program management in the programs and services related to consumer protection, petroleum products price regulation, driver safety, taxation, business practices and registries offered by the department. The provision of local government-related policy advice to government, and quality advice, support, assistance, and program delivery to Nova Scotia's municipalities. The provision of a fair, equitable, and defensible assessment role. Collaboration with internal and external partners to evaluate and improve the quality and effectiveness of government services. Support for government policy in several areas, including data privacy, security and access, and integrity of data holdings. support for government's corporate strategy for e-government services, integrated service delivery, and its corporate collections policy, effective and positive relationships with other levels of government, provincial departments and agencies, and the private sector, the provision of geographic information and associated technologies to support decision-making by all provincial departments, effective and efficient management of the department's resources, financial, human, informational technology, and information, and obviously for quality performance and high morale for our staff. Now, most of these responsibilities are fulfilled via ongoing operations and the services and programs identified in the department's core business areas. However, a few of these responsibilities have been identified for greater emphasis over the next several years and represent the department's strategic goals for the near future. Now, the department's 4 core businesses are consistent with its 4 divisions. The 4 divisions are, first, program management and corporate services, secondly, municipal services, thirdly, assessment services, and lastly, Service Nova Scotia. And these 4 divisions correspond to 4 lines in your estimates book: service delivery, strategy and innovation, corporate registries, and information management systems. The department is largely organized on a matrix basis, meaning that it's organized around the function being performed, such as service delivery or program management, rather than on a sectorial or a client basis. Program management and corporate services has responsibility for most of the programs offered by the department. This includes strategic direction for programs, program development, enforcement, and public awareness. And the division is also accountable for the related legislation, regulations, and policies necessary for each program and for human resource support. Currently, major program areas and activities of this core business include the Provincial Tax Commission, residential tenancies, corporate collections, consumer and business policy, corporate development, human resources, financial services, and audit and enforcement in several program areas. The benefits of these programs include a fairer and more efficient tax collection system, better consumer protection, more effective program management by the department, improved compliance by business with licensing requirements, optimized revenue collection by the department on behalf of government and other departments, and, very importantly, a healthier and safer workplace for the department's employees. This division is also charged with administering the Petroleum Products Pricing Act and its regulations, and the administration of your energy rebate program. Consumer and retail concerns over the cost of home energy and petroleum price instability have become challenges for government and for our department. So in 2006-2007, the government implemented the Petroleum Products Pricing Act to create a regime for regulating petroleum prices in Nova Scotia. And your energy rebate program to help Nova Scotians with the rising cost of home energy by providing a rebate of 8%, which is equivalent to the provincial portion of the harmonized sales tax. Now that both of these programs are fully operational, program evaluation and compliance will be the main issues facing the department. Department staff are working with vendors under both programs to ensure that they understand and fulfill their obligations. The Your Energy Rebate Program will save the average Nova Scotian family about $200 this year by providing an 8% provincial tax rebate, which, as I said earlier, is the province's full share of the HST. And it's provided as a rebate on almost all energy sources, including electricity, oil, natural gas, coal, propane, kerosene, wood, and wood pellets. Members of the House will know that our government fast-tracked the implementation date from January the 1st, 2007 to December 1st, 2006 for all energy sources, with the exception of electricity and natural gas. The customers using electricity and natural gas began receiving their 8% energy rebate on January the 1st. To the greatest extent possible, we're making our energy tax rebate available to Nova Scotians in the simplest manner possible. Bulk fuel and electricity consumers, which make up the vast majority of Nova Scotia consumers, indeed about 85% of Nova Scotia consumers, have their provincial tax rebate reflected directly on their bills. And I'd like to take this opportunity, Mr. Chair, to thank Nova Scotia Power, the Municipal Utilities Cooperative, and our bulk fuel vendors for their support in making the rebate directly available to their customers at point of sale. Application forms for all other energy sources, which include wood, wood pellets, coal, cylinder propane, or kerosene, are available through the government's website, at Access Nova Scotia centres, or by calling a 1-800 number. The Your Energy Rebate Program is designed to address an immediate need to help families stay warm and better manage the high cost of energy bills. As I mentioned earlier, our department is also responsible for administering the Petroleum Products Pricing Act and its regulations. Government began regulating gas and diesel fuel prices in July 2006. Nova Scotians wanted more stable gas prices, and they also wanted those prices justified. Where possible, regulation holds gas and diesel prices steady in Nova Scotia for 2-week intervals. In our province, we set our gas prices every second Friday. Now, regulation also helps provide small and independent gasoline retailers with stable margins so that gasoline dealers will continue to be viable in communities throughout Nova Scotia. As members will know, we agreed to perform an evaluation of price regulation after the first 6 months in the program rather than the first year as was initially intended. Gardner Penfold Consulting Economists Incorporated was contracted to undertake that 6-month review. And of course, their experience in oil and gas industry in general, along with specific knowledge of Nova Scotia marketplaces, made that firm the best choice to conduct the review. Now, the review examined factors that impact the policy goals of regulation, stability of consumer prices, support for gas stations, especially those in rural areas, as well as the cost of regulation for customers and for the government. It also assessed the pricing model and was charged with recommending any improvements they felt would help the policy better meet its objectives. Now, government, as members in the House will know, has received the Gardner-Penfold report on gas regulation. We're currently reviewing the findings and also the recommendations. We will meet with the caucuses when we have completed that, and that actually should occur the week after next, because next week the person who did the study is not going to be here. I expect to be away as well. And once we have brought the report to the government, has had a chance to examine it, and we've been able to meet with the caucuses, or I should say Mr. Gardner's been able to meet with the caucuses and explain the report to them, then it will be made public. Now, I'd like to provide an overview of another branch of our department, which is the Service Nova Scotia branch. Service Nova Scotia was established to provide Nova Scotians with seamless access to citizen and business-related government information and services. Service Nova Scotia is the government's service delivery arm and provides people and businesses of Nova Scotia with easy access to registration, licensing, and information retrieval services while ensuring the integrity, security, and, where required, the privacy of the data and information received. The Service Nova Scotia branch is organized along 4 highly integrated functions, as reflected in your estimated. As reflected in the estimates book. This organizational and management structure supports the efforts of the branch executing its vision, mission, and mandate. Corporate registries leads the modernization and streamlining of legislation and regulations related to citizens, businesses, and land registries. This includes the Registry of Motor Vehicles, Vital Statistics, Nova Scotia Business Registry, Land Title Registry, Personal Property Registry, and the Registry of Joint Stocks. Information and Management Services develops and implements departmental information management and technology strategies and leads the GeoNova Secretariat and the Geomatics functions. Service Delivery provides client-focused access to a broad range of government services and information, including the Registry of Motor Vehicles, Land, and Vital Statistics. They offer services in person at Access Nova Scotia centres, via phone from the call centres, and online at the Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations website. Service Delivery is also responsible for the efficient design of all back-office transaction processing. Strategy and Innovation is responsible to provide leadership and be the innovator of integrated service delivery initiatives for government. This area also develops and nurtures strong relationships across jurisdictions and with all levels of government and at the senior executive level. Benefits of the core business include easier access to ever-expanding information and other services offered by the department on behalf of government. This is accomplished through electronic or physical tools, providing more timely responses to service requests and better quality services in terms of accessibility. Other benefits from the operation of this core business include improved efficiency in the provision of registration and processing functions on behalf of departmental programs and external program owners. Enhanced integrity and security around the information holdings of the department. Improved quality of the data contained in the holdings, easier access to that information, as well as increased ability to share data with other government departments and agencies. As members of this House are well aware, our department is responsible for managing government's relations with the province's 55 municipalities. And the Municipal Services Division provides advice and assistance and prepares policy on municipal matters for the government. The division is also responsible for maintaining the legislative framework in which the municipalities operate. Of equal importance, staff in this area provide advice and assistance to municipalities on behalf of the government. Now, this division operates most of the grant and other financial support programs offered to municipalities. And programs within this division include advice and support to municipalities in the areas of governance, local government administration, finance, and land use planning. And this division, Mr. Chair, also administers over $90 million in total programs, such as the Municipal Rural Infrastructure Fund, the federal transfer of gas tax revenues to municipalities, the Community Transportation Assistance Program, the Accessible Transportation Assistance Program, and programs such as equalization, grants in lieu of taxes, fire protection grants, farmland grants, and the HST offset program. Staff in this division help municipalities to become more effective at providing services to their residents, to ensure their financial viability, and to provide better support development, which provides long-term benefits to the entire province. And this division, as members can imagine, also partners with key clients such as the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities to support training for municipal councillors and staff. And I would probably, Mr. Chair, be fair to say that a number of people who sit in this House as MLAs and came from the municipal political arena have gone through those programs. Finally, Assessment Services is responsible for delivering an annual property assessment roll to each of the 55 municipalities in compliance with the Assessment Act. The property assessment roll provides municipalities with a reliable and stable basis to generate revenue to fund the services to its constituents. The uniform assessment is used to calculate municipal contributions towards education and corrections and determine the distribution of provincial grants to municipalities. Producing the assessment roll is integral to the interests and the financial health of Nova Scotia's 55 municipalities. Legislation also requires assessment notices to be delivered annually to each property owner and to provide for an assessment appeal mechanism. The major activities in the assessment area include the preparation of the annual assessment roll, a property inspection program, the new CAP assessment program, an appeal process, client relations, and technology support. As of April 1st of this year, we reached an important milestone in our assessment services branch. The Property Valuation Services Corporation became a legal entity, and over the next year, we will complete the transfer of assessment services from the department to this municipally controlled, not-for-profit corporation. Open communication with municipalities and staff will continue to be a priority as the process continues. Now, this change, Mr. Chair, is a result of consultation with municipalities, which use the market value assessments to set their tax rates. This municipally controlled independent agency will give municipalities greater input into and control over the assessment operation. And control of the organization will be vested in a municipally appointed board of directors. This is a logical step since the municipalities have financed the operations since 2001. The province will continue to set tax policy, keeping it separate from program delivery. I am also responsible for the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation, a crown corporation that provides a great service to municipalities, their enterprises, school boards, and hospitals. Now, the Municipal Finance Corporation has three principal goals. First, to provide capital financing for approved projects at the lowest possible cost. Second, to manage the finances of the corporation prudently to ensure access to capital markets. And three, to help the municipalities build their knowledge of financial management. The corporation has over $600 million in loans outstanding, and it's completely self-funded and has never had a client default on a loan. It's estimated that in the upcoming year, another $100 million in loans will be issued, with about $93 million of loans being retired. Now, this corporation is governed by a board of directors, with 40% of the board appointed upon the recommendation of the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities. It is just 4 full-time staff, with support resources in the departments of Finance, Justice, and, of course, Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations. By pooling borrowing requirements, the corporation saves municipalities time and money on the costs of issuing debt and the associated legal requirements, the administrative costs and the issuance of tax information slips, the premium the market demands to borrow smaller amounts of money, and the borrowing costs by benefiting from the province's credit rating. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have just touched on many of the areas where Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations employees will be acting on behalf of Nova Scotians throughout this fiscal year. Every day, the employees of this very diverse department go all out to help and serve their fellow Nova Scotians. They are fine civil servants, and I'm proud to be their minister. Now, because staff has joined me, and I assume that members on the other side of the House may have some questions, I will take my seat and do my best to answer them. Now, if you're not ready, I can keep going.
Thank you. The honourable member. The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaver Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I don't know if we're ever ready, but we'll give it a go and see what comes of it. I first want to acknowledge the minister and certainly welcome staff here today, and trust that over the next little while that the human interaction that we're going to experience for the next little while will be rewarding for all of us, and I'm sure it will be. I suspect that it will be, if nothing else, it will be rather painless. I guess I want to go first with, I think I want to replay the memory tape a little bit and go back some months ago when government brought forward amendments to its own bill, Bill 92, the Assessment Act. And I think that was back in November. The changes brought forward by the government was to was to set the cap on assessments at the at CPI, the Consumer's Price Index. And I think it's pretty well known, certainly in the House of Assembly, that we, the NDP, had for a long period of time advocated for just such a change. Since this change took some time, and taken into consideration what we heard in opposition, that it was somewhat impossible to do, I'm curious as to what work took place within the minister's department to make this change possible. And I guess I wonder if it was facilitated over a period of time, if it was a difficult task, and just what hoops or barriers did you experience. And I'd like to hear if the minister could explain when he talks about that work within his department, also what points led up to the department making that decision.
The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
I thank the honourable member for that question. One of the high-profile things that's happened through our department this past year has been the decision by all parties in this House to limit, beginning in the taxation year 2008, the property class increases to CPI. Now, just to go back a little bit in history, as the honourable member will be aware, when we have operated with the ability of people to apply for a 10% cap now for 2 or 3 years, and that was brought in primarily to protect property owners who saw their property taxes rise very, very dramatically in a short period of time. And of course, the place where that happened, it didn't happen all over the province, and it did happen in some of the shore areas. It happened here, I think, in the city of Halifax. We had a very, I guess you'd say, a very hot housing market, residential market here in the city of Halifax. There were rapid increases in property assessments. In the some of the more rural areas, and let's call them sort of where people would view those properties as potential recreation sites, sort of resort areas on the water. People like to live on the water, and you know, a lot of people go from one place down to the try and get by the water or by a lake or something in the summer months when it's warm. So the issue of a lot of people being very unhappy with the increases in their property assessment led to the implementation of a policy where people could apply for a cap. And that cap originally was 10%. Mr. Speaker, government had worked with the Police Department had worked with the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities, and what we wanted to do was to extend the cap legislation. And if you remember, the initial bill as it was introduced was that we would take the bill in, which would introduce the cap legislation, but the amount of the cap would be determined after consultation with the UNSM. And you also will remember that once the bill reached law amendments, then there was an amendment to put that cap at CPI. Now, I can remember, I think there was at least 2 bills in the House that did reflect that, one from each of the opposition parties. And so when the bill came back from law amendments, the CPI was included in it. And so beginning in 2008, the property assessments in Nova Scotia for people, when the properties don't change hands, For residential properties that don't change hands or they don't do renovations that would increase the value of the property will be a change of 2.5 CPI. And to be quite frank, in some areas of the province, it's not going to make much difference. In other areas of the province, it will make a lot of difference. I'm told that there are certainly people in this chamber that feel that the other added advantage of CPI is to make the municipalities more accountable for how they spend money and also how they raise money. So now getting back, I guess, to the other part of your question was what have we done in the department? We have about, well, I guess in November, we would have had about a 13-month period to implement this. The Property Services Value Corporation is now a legal entity and will become sort of take over that assessment function from the whole assessment services function from the department beginning in April 2008. And so what we will be doing is, because we generate the property rolls every year, the assessed value of it every year, it is not a major shift in policy because we assess basically every year anyway. And what we will do is, with the assessment notices, send out an application for people to be capped. It's still an application-based process because the process is for Nova Scotians who own property in Nova Scotia.
Thank you. The honourable member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess for the minister, since we're on the theme and we're talking about assessments and we're talking about the cap, and I know, and since we've already taken that trip sort of back in time a little bit when we replayed that memory tape, and I can remember standing in my place on at least on a couple of occasions, and when the minister and I talked about the cap, and even when I made the suggestion around the cap being automatic. And I know that sometimes you hear the word no, and sometimes I often ask myself, well, how can I take that no and turn it into a yes? And so I guess for the minister, this is I'm going to reiterate another question that's been asked by myself in particular some months ago, and that's with respect to the cap. And have things changed in the mind of the minister and his department with respect to making the cap automatic for those that are eligible for it?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, Municipal Relations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I welcome the member from Hants West to the chair. The reason for the application for the cap is that the program was intended to be, is and will be restricted to Nova Scotians who own a Nova Scotia residential property. Unless there is an application process, we really don't know, the residents or the geographical location of the people who own the property. So, and I expect that the Property Services Value Corporation, who are going to be responsible for administering this next year, and they will be on the cap program, they will assess to see that if it is possible to make this automatic. But if you apply for the cap and have already applied for the cap and been approved for the cap, you don't have to apply for it again. Once you get it done once, then it becomes automatic until the property stands. But initially, people are going to have to apply for the cap.
Honourable member for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll continue to work on that one. And again, when I do hear no, there's always, I guess, hope and maybe the possibility that no at some point in time will become yes. I want to really change gears quite dramatically here and go from go from assessments and going to make that real leap from assessments to MVI, motor vehicle inspections. Now, one of the things that I've heard, certainly in recent weeks, from not only just from motorists, but also from mechanics, around, I've heard things around frustration, anger, and I guess to some degree, worry. And I want to, and I can't stress this enough, and since we're talking about motor vehicle inspections, and we also, when we talk about motor vehicle inspections, we're talking about safety. We're talking about public safety and road safety. And I feel it incumbent upon me to preface my comments by saying that I want to make this perfectly clear and established without any doubt in anyone's mind. And certainly, excuse me, I'm like a lot of members in the House fighting that virus. But I want to make this perfectly clear to even anyone that might be witnessing the proceedings today that the NDP and I agree that road safety is vital to all Nova Scotians. And in no way would I want to do anything or to say anything that would put either pedestrians or the motoring public at any sort of risk. And there are some things